When you think of a successful manga that became a mega franchise, the first that would come to mind would be the likes of Dragon Ball, One Piece, or Fist of the North Star. But what if I were to tell you that there was a short-lived foodie manga that not only had the same amount of success, but became ingrained in Japanese culture as a whole? While there was an anime, it was actually the live-action adaptation that captured everyone's attention. That manga is Solitary Gourmet, written by Masayuki Kasumi and illustrated by the legendary mangaka Jiro Taniguchi. It followed businessman Gorō Inogashira as he travels across Japan to sell imported goods while stopping by the local eateries to satisfy his never-ending hunger. With one single volume, it became a massive hit, especially among the ever-growing foodie crowd of the late 80s. It was so successful that it eventually got a live-action series in 2012 that exploded in popularity, even taking its creator, Masayuki Kasumi, by surprise. The show lasted for over 10 seasons with many TV specials in between, and has left its mark on Japanese culture. So it was only a matter of time until Solitary Gourmet hits the big screens in 2025. But does it have what it takes to dine in the big leagues? Hello there, I'm Doc Harkland, and welcome to a new series called A Quick Diagnosis, where I take a brief look at whatever media interested me at the time. This is more of an off-the-cuff, first impressions type of video. I wanted to at least give you guys something in between my bigger projects, and it's a nice little outlet for me and whatever thoughts I had at the time. On the docket today is Solitary Gourmet the movie, a film that has taken me by surprise on so many levels, and I'm confident to say that it's my favourite movie of 2025. But before I go into detail, I'd like to humbly ask you that if you enjoy this kind of content, please leave a like, a comment, and maybe consider subbing to my channel. It's free and you'll get to see some more content like this in the future. Now to start off, I'm going to do a bit of a follow-up to the Solitary Gourmet episode of Doc Discovers. In that episode I mentioned an anime that was produced by Production IG that was only available on a streaming app exclusively for smartphones, but since the app has long since been shut down, I couldn't find any footage of it. Well, as it turns out, I'm an idiot who didn't look hard enough, because a fan did manage to preserve the show and put it up on the internet. It's ran for 10 episodes with a runtime of 5 minutes per episode. The best I could describe them is short and sweet. These are one-to-one adaptations of the manga, so it was such a treat to see Taniguchi's work in animated form, and having the soundtrack from the live-action show that was performed by Masayuki's band is the icing on the cake. This time the main character, Gorō Inogashira, is played by veteran voice actor Kenyu Horiuchi, which is quite a surprise to me because I know him as the Japanese voice of Raiden from the Metal Gear Solid franchise, but I have to say he's a perfect fit for the manga version of the character. While we're still on the subject, I actually have a funny story to tell in relation to the movie. You see, a month after I published my documentary on the show, it was copyright struck by TV Tokyo. As you can already tell, I successfully fought back and got it reinstated. Ironically, it was after the strike that it began to pick up momentum, of which I'd like to thank everyone for watching after the fact. So what happened? Well, I noticed that around the time I received the strike, they announced the movie. So I assumed an employee or intern saw my video and panicked, which, okay, fair enough, but I believe that they now realise how much of a mistake that was, especially in relation to recent events that I'll get into towards the end of this video. Solitary Gourmet the movie follows travelling businessman Gorō Inogashira as he flies to the city of Paris to meet up with Chiaki Matsuo, the daughter of an old friend. It's during their meeting he learns of an elderly man's wish to taste a soup from his childhood once more. Because of this, Gorō is given the Herculean task of tracking down an ancient soup recipe that has him going on an expedition across Asia. Not only does he have to find said recipe, as well as the special ingredients involved, he also has to find the most qualified chef to replicate this legendary soup. On his travels, Gorō meets an ensemble of interesting characters who are willing to help him on his quest, all of them sharing the same passion for food as he does. Solitary Gourmet the movie was directed by Gorō's very own actor, Yutaka Masashige, with him co-writing the script alongside show's head writer, Yoshihiro Taguchi. It's actually quite heartening to see Masashige in the director's chair, and that's not just because he plays the main character for well over a decade now. One thing I failed to mention in my retrospective was how hesitant Masashige was to play the character. He originally thought it might be a boring role to play, but the television staff gave him enough breathing room to craft the character into his own. Fast forward to now and he's directing the feature-length movie. It came out January 10th, 2025 and was distributed by Toho, which I'm sure a lot of people would recognise for their Godzilla movies. Having the main character go to Paris holds a lot of significance, not just because the majority of the imports he sells originates from France, but because the artist of the source material, Jiro Taniguchi, is very much beloved over there as well. Even having him travel to South Korea is an inspired choice too, because the show garnered a massive fan base there. After all, it's where the mukbang genre first originated from. Now, I came into this movie completely blind. I didn't read any interviews, I even avoided the trailer, so I wasn't sure what to expect. But I already knew I was in for a good time when the movie opens up with Gorō on a flight to Paris where he's having an eternal dilemma over the choice of in-flight meals, only to accidentally sleep through dinner time. I would have been happy if the rest of the movie was full of fun little jokes like that, but what Masashige and Taguchi did for this film was above and beyond. One of the biggest traps studios fall into when they produce a movie adaptation of a popular television show is making it feel more like an extended episode instead of a feature-length film. You see, Solitary Gourmet is formulaic to its core. Gorō visits a town or city as part of his work, he gets mixed up in a comedic situation, gets hungry, and then finds a local restaurant to dine in. Rinse and repeat for 10 seasons or so. And while that may sound dull on paper, what made this formula work so well is its execution. The same could be said for their approach to this movie. In fact, I'm quite impressed by the amount of thought that went into its production. The first few minutes is basically a standard episode, but by doing it this way, it allowed them the opportunity to not only set up the plot of the movie, but pre-establish the main characters to fans while introducing him to a brand new audience who's never watched the show before. It's 20 minutes, but they use that time very effectively, and when it gets to the title drop, it's as if the writers are telling you, just kidding, this is actually a movie. Another aspect of the film I appreciate is the treatment of our main character, Gorō Inogashira. In both the manga and the show itself, he is basically a static character. That's not to say he doesn't have any depth, but in a show where the basic formula is that he eats food at restaurants, it doesn't give him much room to grow either. So the movie gives him a great opportunity to step outside his comfort zone both figuratively and literally. The story really does take him on a wild ride, as they don't pull their punches either. There were moments where I legit felt worried for his safety, and keep in mind he's on a simple quest to find a soup recipe. While Gorō does interact with characters in the television program, it is mainly a one-man show. This time we have an interesting lineup of fully fleshed out characters, all of them performed by a talented cast of actors. I think it was this aspect I was pleasantly surprised by the most. In fact, my jaw dropped during the opening credits when I saw the names attached to this film. First off is Chiaki Matsuro, played by Anne Watanabe, the daughter of famous actor Ken Watanabe, with Ichiro Matsuro played by Sansei Shiomi, who I knew from the Takeshi Kitano Outrage trilogy. So there's your obligatory Beat Takeshi reference. Both characters are performed very well. They have a warm and friendly air to them. They're the type of people you can't say no to, which funnily enough is how Gorō ended up on this crazy adventure in the first place. Next is idol turned actor Yuki Uchida, who I always believe is a very underrated actress. I and a lot of the Japanese audience will know her for her role as Hiromi Junouchi in the medical drama Dr. X. In this film she occupies the second act, and really brightens up the mood with her presence. I'm honestly just happy to see her in more projects. My biggest surprise however is Joe Otagiri, who's pretty much a legend in his own right, but I of course know him as Kamen Rider Kuga. But if one writer isn't enough, the movie gives us two of them, because we also have Hayato Isomura, who played Kamen Rider Necrom from Kamen Rider Ghost. And of course, their characters have an interconnected story that takes up the final act. It's also nice to see Godzilla alumni Takehiro Murata pop up as well, and add some nice bit of levity to the overall story. There was even a surprise cameo from a well-renowned actor, and the way they use him for a joke that's basically a meta-commentary on the show itself is definitely a sight to behold. Everyone does a really good job with the material, and these characters were just one of the main highlights for me. At first you think these are characters who are just passing by, but the film has a masterful way of connecting everyone to the main plot, especially towards the end. The overall theme and messaging of the movie is the idea that food can bring us together. After all, soup has no borders. It's a very wholesome message to convey, and it's a great celebration of our culinary cultures. One of my favourite scenes happens to highlight this very theme. During the third act, Gorō finds himself in South Korea, and comes into contact with an immigration officer played by Yoo Jae-myung. However, they run into the roadblock that is the language barrier. They have trouble communicating to each other in their native tongue, so they end up speaking English. This kills me because they're not only doing this in an Asian country, but this is happening in an Asian produced movie. Maybe it's just me, but I find the absurdity of this situation really hilarious, especially when Gorō just decides to order some food right before this exchange. But it's because of this meal that the pair start bonding. They even use the meal as a vehicle to learn each other's language, which I think is some nice piece of character writing. The overall story is simplistic in nature, but it's because of its simplicity that it allowed Masashige and Taguchi to tighten up the script. After all, I'd rather have a simple story that's told very well over a complicated story that falls apart very easily. It's great to see a lot of setups and payoffs throughout the story, even on a more lower scale. I was even surprised to see something so minor get brought up much later, as that's usually the sign of a writer who took good care to make sure nothing got wasted. Despite the film's length being 2 hours, I never once felt like it dragged on. I was very much invested in Gorō's journey as well as the characters he encounters along the way. It's a story that knows what it's trying to be, and if you're well versed in Japanese cinema, you can kinda tell it's wearing some familiar inspirations on its sleeve as well. If you ever watched the 1985 comedy Tampopo, then the final act of this movie is gonna feel very familiar. In fact, it feels like a very condensed version of that story. Casting Ken Watanabe's daughter in this film can't be a coincidence considering Tampopo was one of Ken's first movies, so I guess we can consider this a spiritual successor. Yutaka Masashige is of course the star of the show. I mean, he has to be considering he's been playing the character for close to a decade now, and he hasn't really missed a beat. To me and many others, he is Gorō Inogashira. Now I'm not afraid to admit that he's definitely starting to show his age, but he doesn't let that stop him from giving an excellent performance. Again, I haven't read any interviews or the like, but it does feel as if this is his swan song. If you've been a fan of the show since the very first episode, then I highly recommend staying through the credits till the very end, because there's a very nice surprise waiting for you, which is a great tribute to the original director of the show, Kenji Mitsuguchi, who unfortunately passed away in 2019. If this is the last we're going to see of this series, then I think this post-credit scene is a perfect note to end on. Hi, Future Doc here. As I was editing this, it came to my attention that they recently announced Season 11 of Solitary Gourmet, so there is more to come after all. I'll admit it's going to be hard to top this film, so let's hope that the quality is still up to par. Anyway, back to the video. Solitary Gourmet the movie is a fun and exciting adventure that is a love letter to the culinary arts. While the story isn't anything groundbreaking, what it excels at is telling a fun story with a lot of heart to it. Throughout its 2-hour runtime, you're treated to a culinary tour of France, Japan and South Korea, while meeting a great cast of characters along the way. Most impressively, I think it's a movie that stands well on its own. If you've never watched the original show, but you like character-driven stories, then I'd say give this a shot. If you're a fan of the show, then yes, this is a definite recommendation, and I'm really glad this film exists. It really makes up for a lot of the cinematic disappointments I had to contend with over the course of last year. As of now, Solitary Gourmet is in a very interesting place. One of the commentators on my Doc Discovers episode came here from watching TikToks of the show, and much to my surprise I see it popping off not only on the TikTok scene, but on YouTube Shorts as well. It's almost as if letting your fans talk about their favourite show will help bring more attention to it. But what do I know? It's not as if I was copyright struck for doing the exact same thing a year earlier. No, I'm not bitter. Now if you're a foodie who loves to browse YouTube for dining reviews, you may have noticed there's a bizarre new trend of Japanese salarymen recording their experiences at random restaurants, and I'd like to believe this is also because of Solitary Gourmet. It's really cool that after 10 years it's slowly capturing a whole new audience, and I really hope this encourages Masayuki and TV Tokyo to consider bringing it over to the West through more official means. Just like the message of the movie of food having no boundaries, I like to believe this is a show that everyone can come around the dinner table to enjoy. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I really hope that if or when this comes out worldwide, you'd consider giving this a watch. I'm currently working on a lot of videos, so please stay tuned, and if you're new and enjoyed what you've seen, please consider subscribing and checking the rest of my stuff out. As usual, thanks for watching, I appreciate it, I appreciate you, and while I'm still in the mood, I think I'm going to check out these YouTube shorts of Solitary Gourmet. I'm very curious to see what people make of this show.
Today our Uncle Mike really wanted some fried pork cutlet. He passed by Chinese restaurants without going in.
Okay, I'm sorry, who on earth is Uncle Mike?
Thanks for stopping by! If you enjoyed the vid, please leave a like and comment below. It really helps.